Hi again, Bond fans, welcome back. In this video I just wanted to talk about James Bond and whiskey, and specifically why a Scotsman would prefer to drink bourbon in the books. While James Bond is well known for his love of vodka martinis, in the books he far more often drank whiskey. While this was sometimes Scotch, from Live and Let Die, which was the second book, he tended to prefer bourbon instead though. But if you think about it, that seems a little curious. As we all know, Bond was Scottish, or at least his father was a Scot and his mother Swiss. And once Sean Connery stepped into the role for Dr. No, that Scottish connection was firmly cemented. Surely James Bond would have naturally chosen to drink Scotch whisky whenever he had the opportunity, wouldn't he? The answer, like many things related to 007, lies with Ian Fleming himself. Fleming's paternal grandparents were Scottish, and according to John Pearson, who worked for Fleming at the Sunday Times and wrote an early biography of him, his mother was insistent on drumming into him that he was a Scot. Having lost her husband to the battlefields of northern France during the First World War, she brought up their sons to idolise their father. How Scottish Fleming actually felt is a different matter, but when in his late 40s and suffering from heart disease caused by years of heavy smoking and drinking, Pearson tells us that Fleming cut down to 50 cigarettes a day and switched from vodka martini to bourbon. After suffering from the inevitable heart attack in 1961, aged just 52, Fleming was hospitalised for several weeks, and during this time he received the advice from his friend Lord Beaverbrook that strong drink was, contrary to cigarettes, good for his heart. And when visiting Japan with Deco Henderson to research You Only Live Twice, Fleming drank the local sake but carried his own supply of bourbon in his suitcase. Henderson asked him whether he really preferred bourbon to Scotch. Fleming replied that bourbon expanded the cardiac muscles while Scotch made them contract, and insisted that it helped combat the effects of nicotine. Whether he really believed that bourbon was good for him, though, is unknown. When we get to the films, Bond certainly does drink whiskey on a few occasions, but rarely early on. In You Only Live Twice he drinks Suntory, and on Her Majesty's Secret Service sees him ask for a malt whiskey and branch water, which actually is an odd request. That should be with bourbon. Finally, in The Living Daylights, 007 drinks bourbon. Felix pours him a glass of Jim Beam. Then in GoldenEye, M offers him a Jack Daniels on the rocks. In Tomorrow Never Dies, while in M's car they drink what looks like whiskey. In The World Is Not Enough he is served a single malt scotch by M after returning from Bilbao. A bottle of Talisker single malt scotch can be seen in the background, although he never has the chance to drink it. And Bond drinks a whiskey in MI6 headquarters during the virtual reality scene in Die Another Day, which is probably Talisker again since a bottle is in M's office. Since Daniel Craig took over as 007, he's remained partial to a whiskey. On the train to Montenegro, and after the stairwell fight during Casino Royale, for example. In Quantum of Solace, while being briefed by M. And then in Skyfall, several single malts from Scotch distillery the Macallan are seen in a number of scenes, most memorably Macallan's 1962 at Dead City. It's curious to note that when the filmmakers, and in particular Barbara Broccoli, talked about returning to Ian Fleming in Skyfall, they did it on a very selective basis. As far as whiskey goes, they went in the opposite direction to Ian Fleming completely. Does it matter? Not much. But it is interesting to note all the same. Okay, Bond fans, I hope you found that useful, and if you'd like any further information on James Bond drinks, then check out my book, The Complete Guide to the Drinks of James Bond. It's available in paperback and for Kindle.